Catching up with Sarah and Ginny, fueled by laughter and insights aplenty. Curiosity, connection, and learning that sticks. Real talk, real lives with practical tips. Welcome to Catching Up with Sarah and Ginny. Come on in.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Catching Up with Sarah and Ginny. And we are absolutely thrilled today that we have got Lulu with us. And I know she loves stories. And I know we're just going to have a fabulous, fabulous interview with you, Lulu. So let's begin with you telling us who you are and what you do, please.
Hello. Thank you very much for having me. And it's super nice to meet you both. I can't believe I missed you both at the National Literacy Trust in person. But I've been, of course, following you for a long time. I'm the founder of Storytime. It's a story brand for kids that we started 12 years ago to literally bring wonder into childhood. I'm really fascinated by stories and the roles they play in childhood and how important they are. So after working with a lot of different magazines and publications and toy brands over the years, I realized that there was nothing that was just purely about stories. No advertising, just stories with beautiful illustrations for kids that would arrive every month. And as I say, the rest is history. We started it, and now we publish worldwide we sell to over 60 countries. We publish in 5 countries already, and we have published more than 1,200 stories over the years. So,
and Lulu, I love that because actually, having been obviously a reader, a teacher that had your magazine in their classes, and just knowing that, I hadn't even thought of that aspect, that it's just stories, and I love that, and it's just, again, looking at something a bit differently. Sometimes when you find out a little bit more about the kind of, because people ask me all the time, what would I recommend and why would, and actually it's that focusing back on, sometimes it's great to have lots of content, but actually around different, but actually that pure, the story, because you've got lots of other bits in it, but it comes back to those stories. And I love that.
yes, it's quite interesting because we come from the premise that 2 things. One is that everything can start being taught through a story. So everything, we have STEM stories, we have real life stories. You can start almost any class by telling a story about something. So we often then develop extra content around the theme, and we can suggest the teachers use this story to then start an entire classroom about something else. And I also believe stories are the first time a child will come across a lot of things in their life. So it needs to be done very nicely so they can find that concept, that idea, they can discover what they are going to go on to love afterwards. But it's an introduction to an entire new world to them. So it's our oldest tradition, to be honest. There are infinite amounts of stories there, and there's so many stories we have never published in a new format or in an accessible format for kids. I keep finding things. I realize we're never gonna run out of ideas or stories, and that's a pretty nice subject to work with.
I think that's amazing as well. You're never going to, that whole thing about historically, that's how we learned about ourselves and about our cultures and our communities, our own values, through being stories. And actually creating things into a story, you are making that kind of schema, that all of the bits connecting, because we learn best when some things are connected together in something. And a story is one of the most amazing ways for that information connected.
And there is the data as well that what we learn through a story, we are 22%, I think, more likely to remember than in any other way, because it just stays with us. We connect the information much better.
Yeah, that's amazing. And just thinking about that, is there anything you could particularly share with us that was a wow moment around maybe something within this?
Well, I think there are quite a few, but there was one that I actually happened just yesterday, so that's why it comes to mind first. But I run a book club in Amsterdam, and with a lot of young adult or young woman, and well, not just a woman, but is a female entrepreneur club, and we run it in different spaces, and there are a lot of people that come, and then I usually have conversations around books and reading and habits. It's quite nice to see everybody's wanting to read more, disconnect, and there's a search for that. And one of the questions I brought yesterday for us to discuss was, which book found you at the right moment in your life? And
Love
one
that.
one of the girls couldn't remember. She was like, "Oh, I can't remember." But then she brought a book from her childhood. She said, "But the one book I remember is a book about fairies that I read as a child." And then I started looking for fairies everywhere, and I realized I've never forgotten that. I still believe in things I cannot see, and I still look for magic and wonder. And then the conversation turned it into childhood books, and I realized it just brought home for me this the importance of what we do when we work with childhood, in because we all remember and we're all built up by what we read as children, and it stays with us forever. It's such an important part of shaping up the adults we become. And sometimes when you're working this sector, because it's pretty hard out there, you hear all sorts of things that kids don't read and don't engage and so on, but then you meet adults and you realize the importance that what you do has had in their mental health, their well-being, in their values. And it brings back that, okay, what we're doing actually does matter. And for me, every time I speak to an adult reader or someone that brings up something in their childhood that influenced them, I realize that there is a point to what we do.
And that's great. Wow, that definitely is a wow moment, isn't it, Ginny?
And it's really interesting because when Sarah and I speak, we often go back to exactly what you're saying, Lulu, about those books from our childhood. And I have got books that have seen better days that are so precious to me, that are books from when I was a child. And I think it's really interesting that they have physically stayed with me on my bookshelf. And until recently, I never thought about that. But there's a reason that they've remained on my bookshelf, isn't there? Because of kind of the impact and the influence that they had on me then. And I guess that they continue to have. So just, yeah, we both completely get that wow. And it goes back to, doesn't it, the impact it's having on the children for when they are adults. We can never underestimate the impact, and actually making sure that they read things that they want to read as well, and that there's a hook, this idea of enjoying what you're reading.
But and also sometimes you don't know what you're going to enjoy really. I think we underestimate children because we want to force them into something. I think as an industry, I speak a lot on industry events and business side of what I do, and I always try to push the agenda for this patience that we need to have as publishers, as parents, as teachers, because with kids we are very brutal. We give them something, and it's like, if they don't pick it up straight away, if they don't read it, we take it away. They don't like it, we cancel the subscription, we close a library. We take things away from them without giving them time to just sit with it and discover it at their own time. We are much more patient with ourselves. Adults have magazines and books lying around their house for days, or for months, for years. And then they pick it up, it's like, oh, this book is really good. I didn't read it last summer, but this summer you did. But we don't do that with kids. We assume that if they didn't love it the very moment we gave it to them, they're not going to be interested, and then we cancel it. And therefore, I always say the
Yeah.
moments of boredom
Yeah.
are the places we fall in love with reading, because you sometimes need to take those distractions away to then discover a story, but we don't allow them to be around. And I think a part of the work we do with the magazine format is to allow it to be there every month, to be around, to be non-threatening, to not be something that's a big deal. You don't need to read the whole thing. You can pick it up a magazine and just look at a short story and still discover something new. And it can be there next month and next month. And it's a conversation, really. And I think we need to be more patient with kids.
Yeah, it's that whole thing comes back to, you know, I love the National Year of, you know, the reading film with the how do we snack, how do we graze, how do we feast on reading? And I'm working with schools where I'm saying, like, let's find out in that clear classrooms, how do they snack? Have you got opportunities for them just to graze throughout the day? And that is about they have to be there. Do you know, I've got so many subscriptions to magazines in my front room. You've just made me look less kind of critically at that and just be like, I do sometimes just pick them up. You know, good housekeeping. I love it. But when's the last time I actually read the entire thing? Ever?
But we don't, and that's the thing, we don't need. But it's like, I think it sometimes because, you know, if you read 5 minutes a day, you are learning so much as an adult and as a child. And I have magazines everywhere. I'm crazy.
Yep.
I've always had. I mean, you see, I have cut out of stuff. Everything I like, quotes I
Yes.
like, I cut out, I stick. Magazines are very tactile.
Yes.
Kids can rip up the page without, you know, of course with books you have to be more careful and you keep them and so. But I love that idea that it's there for them to create their own stories and so on. And I learned a lot about it. I actually my relationship with special needs learning is that I worked for many years as a volunteer for the Autistic Society.
Okay. Yeah.
And I was a befriender and one of the children I met through it, I was their friend for 5 years. And I used to go to their house every weekend to read stories. And basically, it was a child that learned to speak and interact through stories. He was obsessed with Disney and Pixar and books in general. And every weekend, I was fascinated by how much he learned through stories. And we had conversations in character mode all the time because he spoke like the voices of those characters. And a lot of the storytime background when I went on to create Storytime, I was always very aware of that pace, of that time of kids discovering stories. And it's interesting because we have a lot of subscribers that are kids with learning difficulties or like that don't pick up the usual things because they find it overwhelming. And the pace of stories and just having stories, not having advertising, not taking them away from the page has been something that we got a lot of feedback on. But is that awareness of observing kids around me that made me very, very aware of how I wanted to create the product we do.
Brilliant. Love it.
Absolutely brilliant. And staying within that space of special needs then, Lulu, if Send were a song, what would it be and why? And just to let you know, we have got a Spotify playlist and we will add your song to the Spotify playlist.
Wow, that's very exciting because we are a very musical company. So when I told my colleagues that, okay, I need a song, we actually create our own Spotify for this podcast. And we have been listening to a few songs, and I've chosen actually a song from Desiree. It's a song from the 90s. Is that You Gotta Be?
Oh,
You know?
I love that song.
Yes. And I love what it says about, you know, about our being patient, about bringing love into it, because I think that's sort of what makes me thinking when we're talking about Zen learning and yeah.
Just the context of it all, the whole kind of like environment that we're working within, it is all of that kind of, bring a bit of love, bring a bit of joy, bring a bit of patience.
Yeah.
And actually it's about us. I think that's a huge thing, isn't it? We've got to be how we've got to be. Oh, I love that. We haven't got any Desiree on the
I know. I checked your list and Leslie, who is my co-founder, and he's like, if you ever have a musical quiz to go to, get him because he's insane. Like I say 2 bits and he already knows which song it is. So he made the list and then we were discussing it for ages, actually put quite some time into it. But yeah, that's the one we chose.
I love that. Wonderful. And it is that, I think that's probably when we first kind of came up with that question and we're talking about it, because we're talking about how it makes us feel, how we feel within that kind of context, and also how we can raise our own feelings in terms of that positivity, the joy. So a lot of the songs are either about some of the real challenges and complexities and the money
Yeah.
or they're about, come on, it's unwritten.
We
It's
are in this together. It's unwritten.
yeah, we're in this together. And a lot of it is about that collective as well. All together now, I think, was that one of your ones, Ginny? But it's that kind of understanding. Also, isn't that funny that I remembered that, Ginny? There's loads of bits of information I can't remember.
But
Remember your song choice.
But All Together Now was the first song that came to me when I read the question. I thought because it is exactly how I feel about it. We are in this together, and I never look at those differences as, I mean, we all have differences. I don't think anybody is different from. If there were majorities, I don't know, if the majority of the world was autistic, then we all would operate that way. And
Yeah.
we would be the So I just look at
Yes.
the ways of thinking and functioning, and I think we can communicate, because communication allows us to connect to each other.
Yeah,
Exactly.
understand and connect. To
Yes.
understand and connect. I love that. So kind of staying on that as well, thinking around books, which I'm sure, as you said, you're a huge
Yes.
fan, reader, avid reader. So is there any book that you particularly like to share with us?
So I wanted to ask, do you want a grown-up book or a children's book?
Doesn't matter. Can be
June.
any book. And the tricky thing is it's one book.
Okay. Well, on a book that I usually gift to people and recommend that was really influential to me, and I think it goes then with the song that I chose, is The Good Life: Lessons from the World's Longest Scientific Study of Happiness, from Dr. Robert Waldinger from, I think, Stanford University. Basically, it's based on this study they have been doing for 69 years on what makes a good life. And the surprising thing is that it's basically our relationships. When people are young and they answer the questionnaires they made, everybody goes success, careers, and all those things, all this status symbol. And when the same people, they answer it regularly towards the end of life, they all concluded that it's actually the connections we made and how we live with each other and the people in their life. And there are some amazing stories, and it was just such a beautiful realization, because we don't put enough effort sometimes in keeping those connections, in looking after each other, but actually they prove through all this data, which I really love data to get convinced about things, that that really happiness is, we are responsible by creating communities and happiness and connections and the importance, because it really shifts how you live your life. And I've gifted this book to so many people, and everybody said the same thing to me, that it changed the way they look at how they live their own life. So I think it's a great
Well, I
book.
think that's another purchase, Ginny, isn't it?
Yes. Tell us the name again, Lulu.
Yes, it's called The Good Life: Lessons from the World's Longest Scientific Study of Happiness.
Love
Robert,
it. Love it.
Robert Waldinger. I can send you the link to it after the.
Yeah, we're
Yes.
starting to compile a book list as well that we're going to. I've just got to find the right platform to do that. I really wanted a platform like Spotify that we
Yeah.
could around books, and I've kind of looked at different ones. So any idea?
Goodreads. A lot of our book club people use Goodreads for the reviews and so on. So I think that has been the
Best.
most. The most. I think. The thing of is not necessarily the best format sometimes, but it's the one everybody's using, tends to be the one that everybody's gonna find you.
Yeah.
Find the books, yeah.
And I think the book choice is so interesting, isn't it? From what you're saying and what people think a good life is, and then as they go through their life and as they journey on, and then actually what has been their good life. I suppose it's to do with age, experiences. It's definitely one I'm going to read because it sounds so fascinating.
the case studies, he compares like two colleagues that both want to study law, and the one couldn't do so because he didn't have money, had to go back to look after his parents. But then he got married, became a teacher, and became the center of this lovely community. And the other guy went, studied law, became one of the biggest lawyers in America, made a lot of money, but had a miserable marriage, was really lonely, didn't speak to his. And when they got the same questions that they answer in their 60s, the difference on their, but both had the same dream at first. They both saw happiness the same way. And at 60 something, they saw happiness very different, and they had very different lives. So also helps you to reframe what happens to you, because sometimes what doesn't happen to us can be a blessing. And it just put those things in perspective, that is not necessarily the things you have, but the people you have. It was very mindset changing to me. And actually the Robert Waldinger, he writes on LinkedIn some very good essays every now and again about this subject.
Yeah.
I love his newsletter. I think he publishes monthly on LinkedIn.
Brilliant.
And I think you're both gonna like it.
I've learned so much, and what I love is I now want to go out and read the book that you've recommended, Lulu. So this is what I love.
And listen to this again, I want to.
Yes. Yeah, brilliant. Thank you so much, Lulu. It's been an absolute joy having you on. It's just been an absolute joy. Thank you so much. And as we always say, Sarah, it's always a pleasure.
Never a chore. Thanks, Lulu.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Lovely meeting you both.
Thanks for joining us this time on Catching Up with Sarah and Ginny.
Always a pleasure and never a chore.